In recent times, some manufacturers have started to turn their backs on the sports bike sector, but not Aprilia. They've actually done quite the opposite of that. This is their latest addition. It's the RS 457, and it slots in between the RS 125 and the RS 660. It's completely targeted at the A2 sector. It makes 47 horsepower. It weighs in at 175 kg, which is another way of saying it's absolutely hitting the top marks in terms of weight and performance, and it's a really exciting all-new proposition. So the engine, as already mentioned, is box fresh. It's a parallel twin with a 270-degree crank. Very exciting proposition, nice and compact, weighs in 6 kilos. It's completely new from the ground up. They start off with a blank piece of paper, rather than, as some people thought they might have done, taking the RS 660 motor and sleeving it down. The problem with doing that is that the RS 660 engine actually weighs in 6 kilos more than the engine within this machine. So it made more sense for them to start afresh. This engine's probably going to get used in other platforms in the future as well, but more to the point, it's great that they've gone about it that way. They've integrated some fantastic technology such as the gearbox and the way the engine's cooled from some of their more premium motors within the Aprilia range. It's as good as it gets. It makes 43 Newton meters of torque, it makes 47 horsepower. It's bang on the money for what you need for a bike of this capacity, this size. Loads of torque, good top end. So without getting too heavy into the tech on the actual engine, I'll leave it there, and what I'll say is that the motor is actually used, in this instance, as a stress member. So what that means is that you've got this beautiful die-cast aluminium frame. It's the only bike in this sector with an aluminium frame, I should point out as well. And that kind of cradles the top of the engine, bolts to the top of that, and then at the back you've got a steel swing arm that affixes to the rear. So it's quite a slim machine. If you were to look at this where I'm standing now, very narrow. Aprilia said they wanted to do that to kind of open the door to shorter riders, to people that wanted a bit more comfort, etc., to be able to touch the ground. So it's nice and slim in the middle, nice chunky tank. And something that Aprilia were really quite proud of during the presentation this morning is the actual, the bodywork on this bike, the aerodynamics. So Aprilia mentioned that they kind of drew on their experience in racing, especially MotoGP, to help design not just the flow of air around the bike, but even how it cools. It's really quite exciting and interesting to kind of understand what it is that they've done to achieve all these things, from, like I say, cooling to the flow, because ultimately, when you're competing in a class where you're capped on weight and performance, the only other thing you can do is actually make the bike as slippery as possible. So they put massive emphasis on that. They've also put a big emphasis on comfort. Like I say, it's nice and slim, easy to touch the ground with your feet. The pegs, interestingly, sit in such a way that they're actually lower than what they are on the RS 660, but they're narrower as well. So even though that little bit more relaxed in their height, because they're closer towards the center of the bike, they're less likely to grind out. So that's another cool feature just to mention. So the bars on this actually sit just on top of the yoke, which is quite common, again, of bikes within this sector. You know, they're all aimed at people that are wanting to get into sports bikes. They're not overly focused. They're not trying to be a MotoGP machine. They're meant to be comfortable, usable, and pliable for kind of the guy that wants to go down the shops or someone who wants to get on a racetrack with one. So that's the kind of makeup of it. Suspension, so pretty primitive by all standards. 41mm forks up front, adjustable for preload, and the rear shock likewise is adjustable for preload, but there's no compression, no rebound damping adjustments available on this machine. It is what it is. That's why it sits at the price point that it does. It's one of those things. So moving on, another big feature is the tech on this machine. So at the heart of it all, you've got a 5-inch TFT full color dash, loads of interaction with the switch gears, so you can get in and dial in the exact setup you want. So this bike comes with 3 different rider modes as standards, as well as switchable ABS. So it's like 2-tier switchable ABS. So you've either got lots of intervention, or you've got less intervention on the front with no ABS whatsoever on the rear. So if you are taking it on track and you want harder braking, you want to lose that rear, it's got that functionality to it. What you don't get as standard is a quick shifter or blipper. But what this bike here right now has got is exactly those. So it's an aftermarket accessory, which we've been using today on this bike's launch at Modena in Italy. So now I'm going to move on and tell you what it's like to actually ride. Kind of had high hopes coming here for what to expect from this machine. All right, it's not my bread and butter. You know, it's an A2 caliber motorcycle. You know, a lot smaller in capacity and output than the kind of thing that we typically use and ride on fast bikes. So I've been razzing around here all day, 4 sessions in, knee down, elbow down, just having a laugh, and it's been a right blast. So the thing I want to talk about that I like the most about the machine is probably the handling. There's a caveat to that, but I was really surprised straight away at just how agile this bike is. It turns ever so easily. It's so easy to put exactly where you want in a corner or pull back when you're in a corner. And actually when you are in a corner, I keep saying corner, but when you're in a corner, it's surprisingly stable. When this thing is on its side and you're kind of really hanging off the bike to pull it into a bend, it's like it's on rails. It's great. The twist in that is that the damping maybe isn't best suited to me. So I'm 78 kilos, 5'10", and I would say that maybe this is a little bit under damped for me. What that means is that there are a few lumps and bumps around this track, so when you are committed and you're kind of railing into a bend, when you hit one of those depressions, one of those bumps, what you do tend to find is that there's probably a little bit too much travel in the forks, in the rear shock. It kind of wants to dive in, especially even when you're braking or whatever. It's quite easy to upset the bike, and it's hard to kind of recover, you know, because what happens is you feel those forks move down or that rear shock move down, and then it pings back. The rebound's actually quite fast on this machine as well. And I say all this realizing that, like I say, I've just been on track, putting my elbow down, having a right laugh, and maybe this isn't designed for that exact purpose. Maybe actually it's designed to just kind of pop into the shop, so like I say, having good fun on a B road or whatever. It's not a race bike, and I'm looking at it and I'm treating it as though it is a race bike and kind of admiring it from that point of view, because it's egging me on, which is actually a backhanded compliment, I guess. You know, it's making me think it's maybe more of a package, more of a machine than what it actually is, but it's not that focused. This is designed to get people out on sports bikes, and as I say, you know, when you actually look at the bare bones of what you're getting here, you're getting a machine that's nice and easy handling, very pliable. It's just a very forgiving motorcycle that can be pushed far beyond the limits of some of the other machines within its sector. Feel, I'd maybe say that there's not quite the level of feel that I'd want. We're running on Pirelli Diablo Rosso Corsa 4 tyres today, good tyres. It's not always the most telling to understand what's going on with them, and again, maybe that's just the conversation through the suspension, but it is what it is. Throughout the day, I've had good grip, front and rear, no complaints in that respect, and like I say, I have had the confidence to kind of really push this bike around, to brake hard, to lean big, to get on the gas hard well before you're even anywhere near an apex, like going out onto the straight, especially behind me here. You have to be on the throttle pretty much to the point you're tipping in. It's the only way you get down this straight. Bikes like this, you have to work hard, and this thing works hard. And it's complemented by that engine. So yeah, I mean, look, the figures are what they are. Like I say, 43 Newton meters of torque, 47 horsepower. It's not exactly going to set the world alight, but it's good fun, and it kind of gets you focused. It gets you thinking about your revs, it gets you thinking about your gear selection. You work this bike hard. Coming right back to my first point about the riding experience, as standard, this bike doesn't come with a quick shifter and blipper. We're lucky because today these machines have been kitted with those, and straight away I'd say if you're going to buy one, get one of those, because yeah, I guess it would be just that bit less pleasurable to ride this machine without those. The gearbox on this bike is okay. I'm not going to say it's the slickest. I have maybe kind of had a few times, especially going down the box into the first corner where you go from 6th down to 3rd. Had to fight the selector a little bit to kind of force it down to get it down to 3rd. So it's not the slickest of gearboxes. Maybe that's also just a bit of the running in process. These are new bikes. I didn't even know they could even be pre-production, I'm not sure. But anyway, the shifter, the blipper are actual, you know, game changers. They're well worth the money. So if you're going to buy one of these, get one of those. I think that technology is good. Talking to tech, I've had this bike in sports mode all day. Traction control on level 1. The only time I've felt the traction control kick in is actually on this corner behind me. Again, probably because you've got big lean and you're driving hard, and sometimes you're running the paint just to get out of that corner as sharp and strong as you can. Also, I should say there's a lot of punch to this motor. So I'm trying to remember the stat, but I think Aprilia said that 82% of the torque kicks in at 3,000 RPM. So it's surprisingly low down in the revs when you're reaching almost peak torque. And what that means is there's quite a lot of punch. And there is a bit of a, I don't know, an aggression to the way that power comes through. Again, you know, the figures are what they are. It's not a crazy powerful engine by any means, but you feel that snatch when you crack the throttle, the drive to the rear wheel, you know about it. So yeah, you know, having a little bit of traction control in there is no bad thing, you know, but believe me, I'm not even going to begin to look at switching this bike into eco or rain mode. It's just not what it's about, not for me. One thing I would say is you tend to ride with this bike a gear higher in the selection than what you'd think. So coming back to that torque again, because the torque's there, you almost need to kind of preload that next gear. You need to run high corner speed into corners, anticipate that you're going to run out of revs and be that gear higher and try and fight your way through. And this thing will pull, which is cool. But anyway, so lots and lots of fun through the corners, good fun getting out of corners, reasonable speed down the straight. This bike, at the last point before I have to kind of look up at where I'm braking, about 160 kilometers per hour today. Yeah, 100 miles per hour or whatever on this start straight. So yeah, it's nippy enough, but nice and pliable, very linear with the spread of power. The fueling is relatively good apart from that initial harsher pickup, I'd say. But anyway, moving on from that, you know, the package itself is nicely honed. One area which I'm quite impressed with is the braking performance on the machines. And so this bike has been kitted with a Vibra front caliper singular. So there's only one caliper up front on this. It's not exactly the fanciest of master cylinders either. It's all a little bit budget, but actually the stopping performance isn't bad. It's enough to kind of get this thing squirming as you go down the box and you're squeezing hard on that. It gets you hauled up in an exciting way. I should probably add in that this bike's also quite stable when you are going down the box, when you are slowing down. You might get a little bit of a wiggle, but actually there's not that much aggression going on when you're braking, so you don't upset the bike that much. So it's nice and controllable, manageable when you're decreasing the speed. You know, and like I say, you know, the slipper clutch on this or the slip assist clutch on this does a good job at kind of managing those revs and, you know, getting everything under control. So the riding position, so it is, like I say, it's a little bit more upright than maybe like a Pucker sports bike, but it's still great fun. It still feels like you can properly hang off this bike, throw it into a corner. Like I say, I've learned today the elbow down stuff is well and truly on the cards. It's good fun. And yeah, this bike kind of eggs you on. It feels right. Actually, the size of it, again, 5'10". I can get tucked in on this. I like how you kind of wrap around on the tank, get your head kind of nicely tucked below the screen. There's a little divot at the front of the tank so you can get your chin nice and low if you're flexible enough. It's just a relaxed, playful riding position. I keep saying it, but it's not super focused. It's aimed at being non-intimidating and welcoming to people that want to get into the scene. And that's what it does really well. I think that this is going to be a good addition to the A2 sector. What's also interesting to note is the price point. So $6.5 grand, it's kind of bang on the money against its rivals for where it sits. It's got good technology, good performance, good handling, good looks. It's an Aprilia, it's exotic, it's exciting, and it's available now. So if this is a bit of you, go check it out because, yeah, it could be exactly what you're looking for.